Lena had always been drawn to old houses, especially the ones that seemed to hide stories in their creaking walls and faded wallpaper. So when she came across a listing for an abandoned Victorian mansion on the edge of town, she couldn't resist. The realtor mentioned it had been empty for decades, but that didn't bother her. If anything, it intrigued her more. She arrived just before dusk, the sky a mix of deep purples and fiery oranges. The mansion stood tall, its windows like dark, empty eyes. Vines crawled up its sides, and the wooden steps groaned under her weight as she made her way to the front door. The key turned easily, and with a push, the door swung open with a low, mournful creak. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of dust and decay. The grand staircase led up into darkness, and the hallway stretched into shadows. As Lena moved through the house, she felt a chill run down her spine, like the air itself was whispering secrets she couldn't quite hear. She made her way into the living room, where a large, ornate mirror hung above the fireplace. The glass was clouded with age, but she could still make out her reflection. She stared at it for a moment, the silence pressing in around her when she noticed something odd. Her reflection's lips were moving, though hers were not. Lena froze, her breath catching in her throat. The reflection's eyes locked onto hers, and she could finally hear the whispers. Faint, almost imperceptible at first, but growing louder with each passing second. Leave. Now. The words were barely more than a breath, but they echoed in her mind like a scream. Her heart pounded as she backed away, but the reflection's lips kept moving, faster and faster. The whispers filled the room, growing louder until they were all she could hear. They weren't just coming from the mirror anymore. They were all around her, surrounding her, suffocating her. She turned to run, but the door slammed shut on its own with a deafening bang. Panic surged through her as she rattled the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers grew frantic, angry, until they were a roar in her ears. Get out! Get out! Get out! Lena stumbled back, her eyes darting around the room, searching for a way out. The windows were sealed tight, the walls seemed to close in on her, and the shadows twisted and writhed as if alive. The only light came from the mirror, now glowing faintly, casting a sickly pallor over the room. Desperate, she turned back to the mirror. Her reflection was no longer hers. It was a gaunt, hollow-eyed version of herself, grinning maniacally as it whispered the same words over and over. Get out. But it was too late. The whispers turned into screams, filling her mind with terror. She clutched her head, trying to block them out, but they only grew louder, more insistent. The air around her seemed to thicken, pressing in on her, suffocating her. Then, with a final, ear-splitting shriek, the mirror shattered. Glass exploded outward, and the room plunged into darkness. The whispers stopped abruptly, leaving behind a silence so complete it was deafening. Lena stood trembling in the pitch-black room, the silence pressing down on her. She reached out blindly, her hand brushing against the shards of glass on the floor. But something else was there too. Something cold. Something that wasn't supposed to be there. A hand, ice-cold and lifeless, gripped her wrist. She screamed, trying to pull away, but the hand tightened its grip, pulling her closer. She felt a presence, something ancient and malevolent looming over her. The whispers returned, soft and sinister, but now they were inside her head, crawling through her thoughts, seeping into her soul. The last thing Lena saw before the darkness swallowed her whole was her own reflection in the shattered glass, smiling and whispering a single chilling word. Stay. The next morning, the realtor arrived to show the house to another prospective buyer. She frowned when she saw the front door ajar, but when she stepped inside, everything seemed in order. The only thing out of place was a large, ornate mirror in the living room, its glass perfectly intact. She didn't notice the faint outline of a face in the mirror, its eyes wide with terror, its lips parted in a silent scream. The whispers had started again, but they were so quiet no one could hear them. Not yet.